The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball. Lining up, Adrian Noble, and here it comes. To the outs. Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
All right, week 1 is in the books, and some insanity has really occurred. Matthew Stafford's elbow injury looks to be having a ton of impact on his game. Patrick Mahomes torched the Cardinals and showed he can pretty much light it up with any receiver out there. The same cannot be said for old A-Rod, which I should know especially as I started him in fantasy, and he gave me a whopping 3.9 points. But for me, there was no other option for me, as Joe Burrow was my only other quarterback, and he decided he wanted to throw for 4 interceptions against the Steelers, solidifying my views that the Steelers will definitely give Jalen Hurts a rough time come week 8. And then we had the Colts looking extremely fraudish. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, they were down 20-3 to the Houston Texans. However, due to the combined efforts of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr., the Colts came back, forced overtime, but still ended up only just tying with the Texans. Pittman Jr. finished with 9 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown, and Taylor finished with 31 rushes for 161 yards and a touchdown. I have both on my fantasy team as well as Davante Adams, and was still projected to lose, but Javonte Williams did just enough yesterday to outscore my opponent and get me the win. But that's all thanks to, of course, A-Rod, Hawkinson, and Devontae Smith barely doing anything yesterday, or Sunday. But anyways, you've probably read the title of the video, and you're probably just wondering, other than recapping week 1 notables, why am I so focused on this Colts game? Well, because in the game, we saw just how much Taylor's dominant rushing brought that team back into the game. And similarly, had the Lions given their running back DeAndre Swift a similar workload to that of Jonathan Taylor, we might be having a different discussion right now. So first off, let's start off with the positives. The Eagles obviously beat the Lions 38-35 on Sunday, and there's a lot to dissect. First off, Jalen Hurts had himself a game, throwing 18 of 32 for 243 yards and no passing touchdowns, but he rushed 17 times for 90 yards and a touchdown. 155 of Hurts' 243 yards can be credited to Sir A.J. Brown, an absolute monster game for him. 10 catches for 155 yards. Dallas Goedert played the safety net a ton this game with 3 catches for 60 yards. Devontae Smith, as I mentioned earlier, just could not get it going, as he went 0 for 5 on catches. He'll look to hopefully bounce back next week against Minnesota. The Eagles' O-line had themselves a game as well. They let up 1 sack. There were a couple of times Hurts had to rush due to pressure and the rush coming through, though. But, Hurts was really smart with it, There were a couple of times where, he kind of didn't get through his progressions and he ran. But for the most part, he was being pretty smart with it, which kind of shows that improvement from last year. The offensive line is really the glue that holds this offense together, and that was mostly demonstrated through the running back room. If you remember from my Eagles preview video I think that's 3 days ago now, I talked about the most suspect part of this offense was going to be the running back room, because there's a lot of question marks around Miles Sanders. Obviously, can he stay healthy? Can he be productive with the rushes they give him? And what do you know? Miles Sanders, he's in the contract year, really trying to prove it, and that he can be the lead back in this committee. Well, he had 13 rushes for 96 yards and a touchdown. I talked about Kenneth Gainwell and what role would he, find himself playing in this offense. 5 rushes for 20 and a touchdown, and Boston Scott had 4 rushes and 10 yards for a touchdown. A total of 216 yards rushing and 455 total yards on offense. Absolutely phenomenal game from the offense. Only flaw, of course, being that, it was A.J. Brown's game, but, you got to feed the mouth that's on fire, essentially. You're not going to see A.J. Brown making all these crazy catches and taking them for long and not force feed him the ball, And plus, this also helped, like as I mentioned, again in the preview video, that Hurts needs time to establish chemistry first, and what a way to establish chemistry with his guy by, getting this monster game to start off with, and then, being the locker room leader that he is, he already let his other receivers know he's got them next game. So, still keeping that morale up, and, just letting them know, hey, it might have been an off day, but I got you guys next time. But let's really talk about what went wrong this game. So the first quarter started off with slow as the Lions went up 7-0. Then the Eagles started to look amazing as they only allowed the Lions to score 7 in the second, so they got 14 at that point. But that was opposed to their 24 points in the second quarter. The defense especially shined in the second quarter, with Kaiser White tipping a pass allowing James Bradbury to intercept the ball and take it for 6. The second half, though, is where the wheels completely fell off. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams completely took over, getting big run after big run. Jared Goff started hitting his targets, getting an easy touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DJ Chark getting a big touchdown catch over Darius Slay. Again, put simply, had they continued to feed that rushing attack despite being down, the Lions easily could have taken this back. A little bit of a positive when it comes to the defensive side. Jordan Davis got some playing time, even though it was a bit minimal, but he got playing time, and yet in his time on the field, he helped the Eagles essentially eliminate the run. JD played 32% of the snaps, and when he did, the Lions were held to 2.9 yards a carry, opposed to the 10 yards they were letting up when he was off the field. Another low, in my opinion, was the sack total, though. The Eagles only got 1 sack, and that was from the combined efforts of Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. Remember, I brought up that the Eagles were 31st in sacks last year. That's something that I mentioned needed to change. They weren't able to do much to the success. The Lions obviously weren't able to do much either. They only got 1 sack, but, in the coming games, they're really going to have to get to that quarterback, because a lot of times Jared Goff was looking comfortable. And, if you want a bigger example, look at how much Von Miller helped the Bills last Thursday, absolutely just getting to Matthew Stafford and, just disrupting him in that pocket and not letting him get comfortable, A lot of the players themselves did good, I thought, but, I think the main, it's just not a strong start for Jonathan Gannon, I brought up the Colts game for a reason. If Gannon doesn't shape up his scheme, his play calling, and the defense, we're really going to struggle against teams with strong running backs, which if you look at a lot of the games I said the Eagles would lose, it was the Steelers, the Colts, the Titans, and the Packers, If we can't help to stop Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, that duo, it's like we're really going to struggle against these teams. Much like we saw here where, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, had they been given more touches, they would have definitely probably helped the Lions win this game. Because if I remember correctly, they were split 15-7, I believe is what their carries were. And, that just doesn't compare at all to the Eagles with, 13 for Sanders, 5 for Kenneth Gainwell, 4 for Boston Scott. Or actually, no, those numbers are a bit closer now that I realize it. But still, it's like they had they continued that rushing attack, I can't say with confidence that the Eagles win this game, and that's something that seriously needs to change. Getting to the quarterback and stopping that run, which we saw when Jordan Davis is on the field, it was pretty effective. As we look to week 2, I am not so optimistic, solely because we just saw Justin Jefferson absolutely torch the Packers, and I am not excited to see what he might do to this defense, even though the secondary was solid. If I can ask for one change to be made, we saw that in the Packers game for the most part, Jair Alexander was not on Justin Jefferson for a majority of those plays. I hope the Eagles learn and put Darius Slay on him for a majority of those plays, even if it ends up, looking bad and people are talking about Darius Slay being exposed. I'd rather, knowing that we put our number one guy to try and stop him than, letting him go off because we were too afraid to put our number one guy on him, Let's see. As far as final grades go, I'd give the offense a solid A. People might want to fault Jalen for his rushing, but first off, that's what the offense's strength was, especially last year. But, unlike a lot of our previous quarterbacks, I really like how Jalen, this game, he was mainly strategic with his runs. I hope he improves as the season goes on. He improves of looking through his progressions, and not just looking down the field to A.J. Brown or, not looking through all of them and just deciding to run with it. That is something I think he needs to improve on. But he is doing well, with his timing of taking off with the ball, instead of staying in the pocket too long or immediately running as soon as the play is called, he stays there for a bit. He does his best to look around. And if he feels the pressure coming, he takes off, but he does it in such a smart way where, he's not like previous quarterbacks who he's not afraid to throw the ball away, he's not afraid to sit there in the pocket for a bit before taking off, like I said, he's very kind of strategic with his runs. The running back room was top notch, as I mentioned. The receiving core obviously will look to improve, and it will obviously improve as now, after this monster game, you already know A.J. Brown is going to be getting most of that attention moving forward, and that just opens up the passing lanes more to guys like Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, and, it allows Dallas Goedert to continue being that safety net for Jalen Hurts. The defense, I'm going to give a generous C. The players themselves, they had their individual performances were really good and they made their plays. But Gannon himself just seriously needs to improve his scheme and play calling as the season goes on. We need to learn to adapt, especially to the different offenses we're about to see this season. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for joining for another episode of Game Day. As always, I will catch you all next Tuesday. Next Tuesday. That should give me enough time to cover, even though the Eagles are a Monday night. I would definitely be watching that, whether win or lose, I will discuss. And it will be interesting to see what happens. But with that being said, thank you all for joining for another episode. And as always, remember, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.